If you're listening to these words, you are a cherished member of our family. Part 1. Erased Memories. The silence was so profound that every steady beep from the heart monitor beside the bed echoed clearly. The soft glow of the bedside lamp cast faint shadows on the ceiling. A hazy sensation enveloped her mind, as if she were drifting between two worlds, reality and some unknown void. Her eyelids felt heavy. Something prevented her from opening her eyes immediately, as if a veil of mist obscured her vision. A dull ache spread across her head, accompanied by a numbness in her arms and legs. She tried to move, only to realize her body felt sluggish and weak, as if it had been confined for a long time. She could sense the fresh air seeping in from outside. The window was slightly open, allowing the morning sunlight to filter through the sheer white curtains. A gentle breeze carried the faint scent of flowers, adding to the illusion of tranquility. Yet the emptiness in her mind shattered that peace. When she finally managed to open her eyes, the first thing she saw was a stark white ceiling, a vast space with pale-colored walls and a few medical devices. The familiar antiseptic scent filled her nose, making her instantly aware this was a hospital. But why was she here? What had happened? She desperately searched her memory, hoping to grasp onto anything, any fragment that could help her understand the situation. But there was nothing. No images, no recollections surfaced in her mind. All she found was an empty void. Panic began to creep in. She wanted to remember. She had to remember. Who was she? What had happened to her? And why was her mind completely blank? The hospital room was so quiet that Elena could hear every beep of the heart monitor. She was still dizzy, her mind blank, struggling to grasp onto any fragment of memory. But nothing came. Then the door swung open. A figure appeared in the doorway. His steps were slow but deliberate, each footstep creating a firm rhythm against the sterile floor. Elena blinked, focusing on the man who had just entered. He was tall, his tailored suit fitting snugly over his well-built frame, emphasizing his commanding and powerful presence. His face was chiseled, his features sharp like a perfectly sculpted statue. His eyes, icy blue, deep and unreadable, held secrets buried beneath their depths. But what unsettled Elena the most was not his striking appearance. It was his eyes, cold, distant, devoid of any emotion. He stared at her, as if waiting for something, yet there was no trace of concern or warmth, nothing that a loved one should have upon seeing his wife awaken after some unknown tragedy. "You're awake!" His voice was deep, calm, and utterly devoid of warmth. Elena frowned. Something was wrong. This man was too composed, too controlled, as if her condition did not surprise or worry him at all. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice weak but laced with caution. A long silence stretched between them. His eyes flickered briefly, but then his jaw tightened, and he clenched his fists as if restraining something within himself. "I am your husband." Elena froze. She stared at him, searching for any sense of familiarity. But there was nothing. He was a complete stranger. This man was her husband. A wave of dizziness washed over Elena. His words echoed in her mind like a thunderclap in the darkness. Husband? Number. That couldn't be. She couldn't possibly have a husband. She didn't even remember her own name. How could she believe that she was married? Her fingers gripped the white hospital sheets tightly, desperate to pull a memory, a face, a name from the void in her mind. But there was nothing, only an abyss of nothingness. She swallowed hard, fear and confusion swelling in her chest. Who was this man? She looked deep into his eyes, searching for something familiar. A glimmer of warmth, a sign of connection, or at least some emotional reaction to seeing his wife unable to remember anything. But all she found was an eerie distance. His deep blue eyes, cold, calculated, unfathomable, held no trace of sorrow, worry, or even pity. If he truly was her husband, why did he show no sign of pain at her memory loss? A chill ran down Elena's spine. Something was wrong. If they were truly husband and wife, he should have reacted differently. He should have held her, reassured her, shown some level of concern. But no, he simply stood there, silent, as if assessing her, as if weighing some unspoken decision. His words still echoed in her mind. I am your husband. She looked at him again. She didn't believe him. And what scared her even more was that it seemed like he didn't expect her to. Her gaze shifted to the hospital wristband on her arm, which bore her name and some additional information. Welcome to Soul Stories. Bukal. Life can be overwhelming, but here we share heartfelt tales to bring you peace, joy, and inspiration. Your support, every comment, like, and follow, means the world to us. It motivates us to create more meaningful and uplifting stories just for you. Subscribe now and be part of a community that spreads love, kindness, and positivity. Let's make every day a little brighter together. Part 2. The Mysterious Husband. The car glided smoothly along the cobblestone road, flanked by towering trees that cast long shadows. The golden hues of the setting sun bathed everything in a surreal tranquility. But for Elena, there was no peace. Seated in the back, she gazed out the window, watching the scenery pass by. Yet none of it sparked even the faintest sense of familiarity. The man beside her, the one who claimed to be her husband, had remained silent throughout the entire drive. He steered with one hand, his sharp gaze fixed ahead, revealing little emotion. The silence between them was heavy, mirroring the chaos of questions swirling in Elena's mind. At last, the car slowed as they approached a grand estate. Knight Mansion. A breathtaking, colossal structure loomed before her, an opulent European-style mansion with towering gray stone walls, arched windows, and elaborately carved columns. Elena stared at the estate, waiting for some flicker of recognition to surface. Nothing. Was this her home? The heavy iron gates creaked open, and the car rolled onto a sprawling courtyard paved with gleaming marble. At the center, a magnificent fountain shimmered under the golden light, but instead of admiring its beauty, Elena only felt a deepening sense of detachment, a strangely foreign feeling. Stepping out of the car, the heels of her shoes clicked softly against the polished stone. She tilted her head up, examining the mansion once more, willing some lost memory to surface. But still, nothing. It wasn't that the place was lacking in grandeur. If anything, it was too perfect, too immaculate, as though plucked straight from a fairy tale. And yet, it had no soul. Nothing about it made her feel like she belonged here. There were no wedding photos in the hallway, no personal trinkets, no sentimental keepsakes, no trace of a woman who had lived and loved within these walls. The house was grand but cold, lavish but hollow, more like a luxury hotel than a home. The servants and the unsettling atmosphere. As she stepped into the grand foyer, the dazzling light of crystal chandeliers reflected off the pristine marble floors. A handful of uniformed servants stood along the corridor, their postures rigid, their expressions unreadable. But the moment her gaze met theirs, they looked away. No one met her eyes. No one welcomed her back as a mistress returning from a harrowing ordeal. Instead, there was tension, hesitation, even fear. An older woman, likely the housekeeper, stepped forward. Her voice was gentle, yet oddly strained. "Welcome home, madam." Elena stiffened. "Madam?" The word felt foreign on her tongue. Did they truly see her as the lady of this house, or were they merely following orders? Something was undeniably off. Exploring the mansion, but finding no memories. After being escorted to what was supposedly her bedroom, Elena found she couldn't sit still. Restlessness gnawed at her. She needed to move, to see, to find something, anything, that could anchor her to the past she had lost. She wandered through the mansion, trying to piece together a puzzle with no edges. She entered the grand library where thousands of books lined polished wooden shelves. She passed through the lavish sitting room where elegant sofas sat untouched, pristine. Yet there were no family portraits, no framed moments of love or joy. She walked through the expansive dining hall where a long table could seat more than 10, but the space felt untouched by warmth, devoid of memories of shared meals and laughter. And finally, she stopped before a large door on the upper floor. Something about it drew her in. Tentatively, she reached for the handle. But before she could turn it, a voice, cold and commanding, sliced through the silence. "Don't go in there!" Elena startled, spinning around. Andrew stood behind her, his icy gaze locked onto hers. He didn't need to elaborate. His expression was enough. There was something behind that door, something she wasn't meant to see. Her fingers curled into a fist. Something was very, very wrong with this mansion, and she had to uncover the truth. Elena quickly realized that her husband was nothing like the man she had imagined in a marriage. He didn't care. He didn't worry. And most importantly, he didn't want to be close to her. In the first few days after returning to Night Mansion, Elena barely saw Andrew except for brief moments, passing each other in the grand hall or during meals he rarely attended. He seemed to be deliberately keeping his distance. He never initiated a conversation. He never asked about her condition after the accident. Even though the mansion housed only the two of them, at least in name, Andrew had built an invisible wall between them, refusing to let her step into his world. He wasn't cruel in an overtly malicious way, but his indifference and detachment were far more terrifying than hatred. Elena had thought that if they were truly married, there would be small habits, shared moments that would trigger some sense of familiarity when she was near him. But the reality was entirely different. Every morning when she woke up, the bed beside her was already empty. Every night when she went to sleep, Andrew was never home before her. He spent most of his time locked away in his study, a place she wasn't allowed to enter. And when he wasn't there, he was out, busy with work or meetings she had no knowledge of. It was as if he wanted to disappear from her life entirely. Elena couldn't bear this uncertainty any longer. She needed to know who she was, what their relationship truly was, and, most importantly, why Andrew acted as if she didn't exist. One evening, when she finally found him in the living room, a rare occurrence, she decided to confront him. "How did we meet?" she asked, her gaze locked onto him. Andrew didn't even look up, simply flipping through the pages of the document in his hands. "A long time ago." His reply was clipped and dismissive. Elena frowned. "What do you mean?" "I don't remember anything, Andrew. I just want to know about our past." This time he snapped the folder shut, his sharp gaze flicking toward her. "You need to remember on your own." His voice was deep and devoid of warmth. A feeling of unease crept into Elena's chest. "Why can't you just tell me? Even a small detail would help." He shrugged. "There's nothing important." A wave of frustration surged through her. Nothing important? What about their marriage? Their memories together? Did none of it matter to him? Elena's fingers curled into fists, her eyes burning with determination. "What are you hiding from me?" For a brief moment, a flicker of hesitation crossed Andrew's face, so quick it almost went unnoticed. But it was there, and that was enough. Instead of answering, he simply stood up, adjusted his suit, and turned away. "Don't overthink things, Elena. Get some rest." The door closed behind him, leaving her standing there, drowning in unanswered questions. Elena refused to believe that their relationship had always been this cold and distant. Something had happened, something he didn't want her to remember. Part 3. Pieces of the Past. As night fell, Night Mansion was swallowed by silence. Elena lay awake, her mind plagued by unanswered questions. Why was Andrew so distant? Why couldn't she remember their marriage? And why did it seem like everyone in this house was hiding something from her? Too many mysteries, and not a single explanation. A locked drawer and a startling discovery. Unable to endure the suffocating unease, she left her bedroom and wandered through the mansion. Her steps eventually led her to the library, the very place where Andrew spent countless hours. Moonlight filtered through the massive glass windows, casting a soft glow over the towering bookshelves. Elena ran her fingers along the spines of the books, but nothing stood out. Until she approached the large wooden desk at the center of the room. One of the drawers on the right opened easily, but the left one was locked. A surge of curiosity shot through her. Why was this one locked? She tugged at it, but it wouldn't budge. Glancing around, her eyes landed on a small set of keys hanging from a nearby shelf. She hesitated, but she had to try. After carefully testing each key, click, the drawer unlocked. Inside, there were several documents, but her heart pounded violently when she saw a neatly placed divorce agreement on top. A shocking truth. The divorce papers had her signature. Elena picked up the document, feeling as if the entire world had tilted beneath her feet. It was a legally drafted divorce settlement, professionally written with precise legal terms. And the most terrifying part, at the bottom of the page, beneath the words Party A, Elena Rossi, was her signature. She had signed it, but she remembered nothing. Her hands trembled as she stared at the inked name. Had she really wanted to leave Andrew? If so, why hadn't he mentioned it? And if they were getting a divorce, why was she still living in his mansion as his wife? A sense of dread wrapped around her chest, tightening like a vice. Confronting Andrew. A cold answer. Elena didn't waste another second. She stormed out of the library, heading straight for Andrew's private study. Without knocking, she pushed the door open. Andrew stood near the tall windows, a glass of wine in his hand. His broad silhouette cast a long shadow under the dim glow of his desk lamp. He turned as she entered, but there was no surprise in his expression, as if he had expected this. Elena threw the divorce papers onto his desk, her voice trembling with both anger and confusion. "What is this?" Andrew glanced at the document, then casually took another sip of his wine, as if it were nothing. "Our divorce papers." His tone was flat, unaffected. Elena's pulse hammered in her ears. "Why don't I remember this? Why did I sign it but have no memory of it?" For the first time, a flicker of tension crossed Andrew's icy blue eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. He set down his glass, stepped toward her, and said in a low, cold voice, "Because you wanted to leave me." Elena froze. She had wanted to leave him? That couldn't be true, because deep in her heart, something felt terribly wrong. She took a step back, her gaze searching his for a shred of truth. "I don't believe you. If I truly wanted a divorce, then why am I still here?" Andrew's jaw clenched, but he didn't answer immediately. He was hiding something. Elena could feel it, and she wasn't going to stop until she found the truth. A walk in the moonlit garden. The pale moonlight bathed the vast gardens of Night Mansion, casting eerie silver shadows over the towering trees and lush flower beds. Elena couldn't sleep. After her heated confrontation with Andrew, her mind was in turmoil. Had she really wanted a divorce? If so, why couldn't she remember anything? And more importantly, why was Andrew acting like there was something she wasn't supposed to know? She needed air. She needed space. And so she stepped outside into the garden behind the mansion, a name from the past. The stone pathways led Elena past a grand fountain where the soft trickling of water blended with the whispering night breeze. She pulled her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders, shielding herself from the creeping cold of the late hour. As she turned into a narrow pathway lined with towering trees, she froze. Andrew's deep voice echoed from somewhere ahead. She instinctively pressed herself against the trunk of a tree, her heart pounding. He was on the phone. "I already warned you, Victoria, don't call me at this hour." Elena stiffened. Victoria Langley? She had never heard that name before. Andrew's voice was tense, edged with a rare trace of unease. "Bob, I said I would handle it. You don't need to interfere." A faint murmur came from the other end of the line, but Elena couldn't make out the words. Then Andrew's voice turned sharp. "Number, this has nothing to do with her." Her? A chill ran through Elena's veins. Who was he talking about? Was she referring to her? Or was there someone else? The confrontation. Andrew avoids the truth. The moment the call ended, Elena turned quickly, hoping to slip away unnoticed. "But have you heard enough?" Andrew's low, icy voice cut through the air behind her. She froze. Her heart hammered in her chest as she slowly turned to face him. Under the moonlight, Andrew's face held a dangerous edge. Yet there was something else there too. Something like caution. He stepped toward her, slowly, deliberately. His gaze never wavered. Elena stood her ground. "Who is Victoria Langley?" she demanded, her voice firm, no longer trembling. Andrew stared at her for a moment. Then he let out a quiet chuckle. But it wasn't one of amusement. This has nothing to do with you. His dismissiveness only fueled her frustration. I am your wife, and I remember nothing about our marriage. And now you're telling me that this doesn't concern me? Andrew's jaw tightened, his blue eyes darkening. You don't need to know. Why? Because if I remember, I'll uncover the truth you're hiding? The tension between them was suffocating. Andrew exhaled slowly, as if trying to suppress something deep within him. Then he took a step back, a shadow of something unreadable flickering across his face. Can go to sleep, Elena. Stop digging too deep. And with that, he turned away, walking off into the night, leaving her alone in the cold. Elena watched his retreating figure, her mind spinning. One thing was certain. Victoria Langley was connected to their past, and Elena wouldn't stop until she found out the truth. Part 4. Memories return. Elena started having strange dreams. They weren't clear, nor were they seamless. They came to her in flashes, abrupt and fleeting. During the nights, she fell into deep sleep. At first, the dream was warm. She saw herself standing by the seaside, the golden hues of sunset painting the sky in soft shades of orange. A strong, warm hand held hers. She looked up and saw Andrew. But he wasn't the cold, distant man he was now. He smiled at her. A smile that wasn't guarded, wasn't distant. A smile filled with love. She felt it, deeply, unmistakably. They stood together talking about the simplest things, about their days ahead, about a future they once believed in. Her heart felt light. Her soul felt at peace. But then, a dream of betrayal. Everything shifted. The sunset vanished. Now she stood in a darkened room, rain pounding furiously against the window pane. Andrew was no longer gentle. His face was cold, merciless. His piercing blue eyes burned with fury. You don't believe me? Her voice trembled. Whether from anger or heartbreak, she didn't know. Andrew's fists clenched, his gaze cutting through her like a blade. How can I believe you? His voice was dangerously low. When I saw you with another man. Another man? Elena's heart shattered. She didn't understand. But she felt the pain, the sharp, agonizing pain, as if it had truly happened. She saw herself crying, tears streaming down her face. But Andrew, he didn't believe her. He turned away. She lunged for him, trying to grasp his hand. And then, everything disappeared, waking in the dead of night. Elena shot up in bed, gasping for air. Her body was drenched in sweat. It felt too real. She could still feel the ache in her heart, the helplessness in her dream, the wounded look in Andrew's eyes. Those images, they couldn't be just dreams. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest, feeling her heart racing. She had loved him. They had been happy. But what happened? What had she done to make him lose his trust in her? A deep, unshakable feeling settled in her gut. The truth lay within the memories she had lost, and she had to remember, at any cost, the search for answers. The morning sun bathed Night Mansion in golden light, but Elena's mind was clouded with uncertainty. The dreams of her past wouldn't stop haunting her. Andrew had loved her, but then he had stopped believing in her. She needed answers, and she knew exactly who to ask. Seeking Emma, a friend from the past, a name suddenly surfaced in Elena's mind. Emma Carter, a close friend from her past. She quickly scrolled through her phone contacts, praying that the number was still there. It was. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the call button. After a few rings, a familiar voice answered. Hello, who is this? Elena hesitated for a moment, then spoke. Emma, it's me, Elena. A stunned silence stretched between them. Then, Elena! Emma's voice was laced with disbelief. Oh my God! Do you remember anything? Elena bit her lip. Not much, but I need your help. Can we meet? Emma didn't hesitate. They agreed to meet at a small cafe in the heart of the city. Elena sat across from Emma in a quiet corner of the cafe, gripping the edge of her scarf as anxiety twisted in her chest. This was the moment she had both anticipated and dreaded, A meeting with someone who could tell her the truth about the past she had forgotten. She looked at Emma with hope and uncertainty, her voice trembling slightly. Tell me the truth. My marriage with Andrew, what was it really like? Emma sighed, her eyes filled with something that looked like pity. Elena, you and Andrew were deeply in love. Elena's heart raced. In love? But why couldn't she feel it when she looked at him now? Emma continued, her voice softer. You two married for love, not for power, not for wealth. You loved him recklessly, and Andrew, he loved you just as much. Elena inhaled sharply, but no memories surfaced. Then why were we heading for a divorce? Emma's expression darkened. After a long pause, she finally spoke. Because someone made Andrew believe that you betrayed him. Elena's brows knitted together. Who? Emma hesitated, then uttered a name that sent an eerie chill down Elena's spine. Victoria Langley. The name. There was something familiar about it. A vague, shadowy recollection that she couldn't quite grasp. Who is Victoria? Emma's fingers curled into a tight fist, her tone darkening. Andrew's ex-girlfriend. Elena froze. An ex question mark. Why would she have anything to do with our marriage? Emma let out a cold laugh, her eyes sharp. Because she wanted him back. And she did everything in her power. Emma studied Elena's face carefully, as if searching for something. Elena, do you really not remember? Elena pressed her lips together and shook her head. I remember glimpses, but nothing is clear. Emma sighed before continuing. Victoria came back nearly 2 years after you and Andrew were married. At first, she pretended to be nothing more than an old friend, but in reality, she was finding every opportunity to get close to him again. Emma's expression darkened. And then, suddenly, rumors started to spread about you having an affair. Elena's stomach twisted. An affair? Emma nodded grimly. A series of photos, text messages, evidence, all pointing to you being involved with another man. Elena's mind reeled. It all happened so fast, you didn't even have time to react. And no matter what you said, there was no way to prove your innocence. Elena felt dizzy. Her chest tightened. Had she really done it? Or dash, had she been framed? Emma grasped Elena's hands tightly, her expression firm. But I know you, Elena. You are not that kind of person. You would never betray Andrew. Elena swallowed hard, her voice breaking. Then, what did I do when I was accused? Emma's eyes gleamed with pride. You didn't just sit there and take it. You fought back. You started your own investigation. Elena's breath hitched. She investigated? Then why couldn't she remember? Emma nodded, continuing. You called me. You told me you believed it was all a setup. You suspected that someone orchestrated everything. A shiver ran down Elena's spine. She had known the truth. But why had it all vanished from her mind? The night of the accident. Emma took a deep breath, looking directly into Elena's eyes. Elena, you got into the accident on your way to meet me. Elena froze. I was coming to see you? Emma nodded. You told me you had found evidence. We had planned to meet, but you never made it. Elena's breathing quickened. She felt an icy chill crawl down her spine. The accident, was it really just a coincidence? Emma's sharp gaze locked onto hers. I don't think so. Elena bit down on her lip. She had found the truth, but before she could speak it aloud, she lost everything, a dangerous revelation. Emma's grip on Elena's hands tightened. Elena, do you really believe your accident was just an accident? Elena felt her entire body tense. She didn't believe in coincidences. Victoria had appeared immediately after her accident. Victoria had taken advantage of her memory loss to get closer to Andrew, and Victoria had the biggest motive to make her disappear. Do you think Victoria was behind the accident? Emma didn't answer immediately, but her silence was enough. Elena's heart pounded violently. She needed the truth. She needed to recover her lost memories. Because if Victoria had orchestrated everything, then Elena wouldn't let her win. Part 5. Confrontation and the truth revealed. Elena knew that if she wanted to expose Victoria, she needed irrefutable evidence. After speaking with Emma, her suspicions were confirmed. Victoria was undoubtedly involved in her accident, but suspicion wasn't enough. She needed proof. Proof that would shatter every lie right in front of Andrew. With Emma's help, Elena retraced the events leading up to her accident. Anonymous messages sent to Andrew containing fabricated evidence of her supposed affair. Secret meetings between Victoria and a shady figure, the person who orchestrated the accident. Security camera footage mysteriously cut on the day of her accident, right when she was on her way to meet Emma. Her doctor receiving money to claim that her memory loss could be permanent. The deeper she dug, the clearer it became. Victoria had orchestrated everything. The perfect opportunity. The only way to bring Victoria down was to make her reveal herself in front of Andrew. And the perfect opportunity arose. A grand corporate event hosted by Andrew himself. Elena walked into the ballroom with a confidence she had never felt before. Part of it was because she knew the truth, and part of it was because she knew Victoria was about to lose everything. Victoria stood beside Andrew, her eyes icy and calculating as she spotted Elena. But Elena didn't flinch. "Victoria," she said, her voice calm but commanding, "we have unfinished business." Victoria let out a mocking laugh, but Elena saw the flicker of unease in her eyes. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the messages accusing me of cheating." The room fell silent. Andrew's head snapped toward Victoria, his piercing blue eyes assessing every shift in her expression. "Elena, what are you saying?" His voice was low, measured. Elena pulled out her phone, displaying the anonymous messages that had framed her. "These messages," she lifted her gaze, locking eyes with Victoria, "were sent from your number." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Victoria let out a sharp laugh, but this time it lacked confidence. "You're insane, Elena." Elena stayed calm. She reached into her bag and produced a stack of documents, transaction records showing Victoria paying someone to fabricate evidence. She handed them to Andrew. He stiffened, gripping the papers so tightly his knuckles turned white. The moment of truth. Panic flashed across Victoria's face. She desperately turned to Andrew, her voice pleading. "Andrew, you can't believe her. Everything I did it to protect you." Andrew's jaw clenched. "Protect me?" His voice was razor sharp. "By destroying my marriage?" Victoria had no response. But Elena wasn't done. She pulled out one final piece of evidence. A recorded conversation between Victoria and the man she hired to orchestrate the accident. She pressed play. "Just make sure she disappears for a while. Andrew will come back to me." Silence. Victoria went pale. Andrew's grip on the papers tightened. His face was stone cold, but his eyes burned with fury. "You did all of this." His voice was eerily calm. "Just to break up my marriage." Victoria's lips parted, but no words came out. Elena stepped forward, her eyes unwavering. "You wanted me gone, Victoria." Her voice was steady, strong. "But unfortunately for you, I came back." Victoria stood there, trapped, her eyes darting between Elena and Andrew. Andrew remained silent, but his expression was unreadable, except for the unmistakable disgust in his eyes. Elena pulled out the final stack of documents. Every lie, every transaction, every manipulation Victoria had executed. She threw them onto the table. "Do you have anything left to say?" Victoria shuddered, her hands trembling. "But then," she laughed, a hollow, bitter, twisted laugh. Victoria inhaled deeply, her lips curving into a forced, mocking smile. "Fine." Her voice was unnervingly calm. "Yes, I did it." Andrew stiffened. Elena narrowed her eyes. "I created everything. The photos, the rumors. It was all me." Elena felt no surprise. Andrew took a small step forward, his voice dangerously low. "Why?" Victoria's mask cracked. She let out a bitter laugh, her eyes flashing with hatred. "Why?" She stepped closer, her voice shaking with suppressed rage. "Because I love you, Andrew." Her voice rose, raw and desperate. "We were supposed to be together. I was there first." Part 6. A Love on the Brink. Victoria's eyes burned with pure hatred as she stared at Elena. Do you think I could stand watching him love you? Victoria's voice was laced with bitterness, her teeth clenched. You're nothing. You don't deserve him. Elena didn't flinch. She simply watched Victoria, the woman so obsessed with a love that was never hers. Victoria took a desperate step toward Andrew, her gaze pleading. Don't you see, Andrew? Her voice cracked. You belong to me, not her. I was there first. I was the only one who stood by you when you needed someone. Andrew didn't even blink. He looked at Victoria as if she were a stranger. You destroyed my marriage because of your own selfishness. His words were ice cold, each syllable like a blade. And I was a fool to ever trust you? Victoria laughed, but it was hollow, filled with nothing but defeat and bitterness. Her gaze snapped back to Elena, filled with resentment. You won, Elena. But Elena didn't feel like she had won. She hadn't wanted to defeat Victoria. She had only wanted to reclaim the truth. A truth that never should have been stolen from her in the first place. Justice is served. Andrew turned to Elena, and for the first time in a long while, his gaze held pain and regret. Elena, his voice was raw, broken. I was wrong. Elena stared at him, her heart aching. Yes, you were. She couldn't forgive him. Not yet, but at least. The truth had finally come to light. Victoria was dragged away, screaming in frustration. That night, the police arrested her, charging her with attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. As she was handcuffed and escorted away, she continued to scream Andrew's name, but no one listened. Justice had finally been served. But for Elena, it no longer mattered. The war between her and Victoria was over, and this time, she had won. The final goodbye. That night, Night Mansion was silent, but inside Andrew's heart, a storm raged on. He returned home only to see Elena walking away. Panic surged through him. Elena! He strode forward, reaching for her wrist. She stopped, but didn't turn around. Elena, please! His voice was rough, desperate, not the voice of a powerful CEO, but of a man afraid of losing the one person who mattered most. She pulled her hand away, and when she turned to face him, he saw it. The heartbreak. There was no anger, no accusations in her eyes anymore. Just pure, aching sorrow. And that was worse than anything else. Elena took a deep breath, her voice trembling. If you loved me? Her words cracked, but she forced herself to continue. Then why? Did you never believe me? Andrew felt the weight of her words crush him, like a knife straight to his heart. Too late to fix what was broken. Andrew wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, he knew the answer. He had loved her, but he had let his doubts destroy everything. He had failed to protect her. He had believed someone else over her. Elena clenched her fists, her voice firm despite the tears threatening to fall. Andrew! Her voice shook, but her conviction did not. I can't stay here anymore. Andrew's heart stopped. No! He stepped forward, reaching for her. Elena, please! But she took a step back, away from him, away from everything. And then she turned away and walked out. Each step felt like a dagger to Andrew's heart. Was it too late? Andrew stood there frozen, watching her leave. He wanted to run after her, to beg her to stay. But what right did he have? He had hurt her. He had lost her trust. Would she ever let him fix this? Would she ever let him hold her again? Or was it too late? He would not let her go forever. A fear unlike any other seized Andrew's heart, the fear of losing her forever. And that was something he couldn't allow. Not again. Not this time. If there was even a single chance left, he would fight for her. Because now Andrew finally understood. Elena was his everything. And Part 6, A New Happiness. A year had passed, but the memories remained. Venice, the city of quiet canals, ancient stone streets, and hearts that find their way back to each other. Elena had changed. She was no longer the woman left behind with a shattered heart. She had picked herself up, built a new life, without Andrew, without the painful past. She worked at a small publishing house in Venice, enjoying a peace she had never known before. But had she truly forgotten him? That evening, the sun cast golden hues over Venice, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. Elena strolled along Rialto Bridge, where lovers whispered their promises and shared stolen kisses. She paused, resting her hands on the old stone railing, watching the gondolas glide across the emerald waters below. She had no idea that fate had arranged something for her that day. As she turned to leave, a voice, low, deep, and achingly familiar, called her name. Elena! She froze, the world stopped, face to face with the past. Andrew, the man she had loved, the man who had broken her, the man who now stood before her. He hadn't changed much, but his eyes, they no longer held that icy distance. Instead, they were filled with something deeper. Regret, longing, pain. Elena struggled to breathe. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but she never thought it would come so soon. He stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. Elena! His voice was raw, as if he had been holding back these words for a year. I lost you once. He inhaled sharply, his fingers curling at his sides. I can't lose you again. Elena's heart twisted. She had waited so long to hear these words from him, but now as they finally reached her ears, she was afraid to believe them. Andrew didn't rush her. He simply stood there, letting her feel the weight of his words. No more arrogance, no more doubt. Just a man who had learned the true value of the love he once lost. Elena hesitated, then slowly. She lifted her hand, her fingers brushing against his sharper, more exhausted features. Her fingertips traced along his jaw, testing if this was real. Andrew closed his eyes, leaning into her touch, as if this was the first time in a year he had felt something truly precious. She didn't speak, but that touch was a sign that something had never truly ended. Elena kept her hand on his cheek, feeling the warmth beneath her palm. 1 year ago, he had let her walk away. Now he had come back, not as the cold, proud man she once knew, but as a man who had lost everything and finally understood what truly mattered. He didn't beg for forgiveness. He didn't try to justify the past, because they both knew. No apology could undo what had already happened. She had loved him once with everything she had, and he had broken that trust. But standing there, beneath the Venetian sunset, she realized she had never truly stopped loving him. Andrew held his breath, waiting. He didn't push. He didn't plead. He simply stood there, offering his heart once more. Elena's eyes softened. She took a deep breath. Then, without hesitation, she pulled him down. Not because she had forgotten the pain, but because she was ready to start again. When their lips met, time stood still. No more past wounds. No more misunderstandings. No more words left unspoken. This kiss was different. It wasn't desperate or fearful. It was slow, gentle, but it carried everything they couldn't say aloud. It was forgiveness, unspoken. It was a promise for the future. It was love that had never died, only waited. When they pulled away, Elena smiled. A quiet, knowing smile. Andrew said nothing. He only reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers, holding on tightly. No grand promises, no unnecessary words, because this time, they wouldn't let go. They couldn't change the past. But from this moment on, they would write a new story together, walking towards forever. Hand in hand, they strolled through the ancient stone streets of Venice, where the street lamps began to glow, their light reflecting off the quiet canals. For a moment, they didn't speak. They simply listened. To each other's breathing, to the sound of their footsteps on the cobblestone, to the gentle whisper of the wind carrying the scent of the city. Neither of them knew where this new chapter would lead, but one thing was certain. This time, they wouldn't lose each other again. In the quiet glow of Venice, Andrew was the first to break the silence. Are you happy, Elena? His voice was soft, yet laced with hesitation. Elena met his gaze, her eyes reflecting a storm of emotions. She had learned to live without him, but had that truly been happiness? She exhaled, her response measured yet honest. I don't know, but I'm okay. Andrew nodded slowly, as if he understood the weight behind her words. I want to make you happy, he admitted, not because of what happened in the past, but because I know you are the one person I can't afford to lose again. Elena took a deep breath. She knew he wasn't just saying these words to win her back. He had truly changed. No longer the man who only trusted himself. No longer the man who let doubt destroy his love. This Andrew had learned how to cherish, to appreciate, to fight for love. Are you willing to start over? He asked, his voice carrying hope. Elena didn't answer immediately. She looked out over the shimmering waters of Venice, where gondolas drifted, carrying lovers and whispered promises. Then a soft smile graced her lips. She couldn't change the past, but she could choose her future. Turning back to him, she met his gaze with newfound certainty. We can't go back to what we were, Andrew. She watched him closely, but instead of disappointment, a smile curved his lips, because he understood. Then let's write a new story, he said, his voice as warm and rich as a violin's melody drifting through the Venetian night. Andrew reached for her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. This time, she didn't pull away. They continued walking, their steps slow and steady, as if they had all the time in the world. This time, there were no more secrets. This time, there were no more doubts. Only two souls learning how to love again, one step at a time. No one knew what the future held, but tonight, under the starlit Venetian sky, they had found each other again. And that was enough. Love isn't just about passion, it's about trust. Andrew lost Elena not because he didn't love her, but because he didn't trust enough. Don't let doubt destroy a relationship. To love is to believe, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means choosing to give love another chance. Elena could have walked away forever, but instead she chose to move forward, stronger, wiser, and more certain of herself. Not everyone gets a second chance like Andrew. So if you love someone, don't wait until they're gone to realize how much they mean to you. Sometimes an apology isn't enough. Cherish them while you still can. Thank you for following this story. What do you think? If you were Elena, would you have forgiven Andrew? Does he deserve a second chance at love? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional and powerful stories. Share this story with others who need to hear it. Stay tuned for the next one. Emma Lawson was a young, independent, hardworking, and ambitious woman. She worked at a small interior design firm where she took great pride in the projects she contributed to. With her meticulous, creative, and skillful designs, Emma was recognized as one of the promising talents in the company. Her life was simple yet peaceful. Every morning, she woke up feeling content with her job and the close friendships she had built with her colleagues. Though she wasn't wealthy, Emma always felt that she had everything a young woman needed to be happy. However, that was the story of an Emma living in a serene world, until a phone call from her beloved father changed everything. Sitting in her usual cafe, the place she often visited to find creative inspiration, Emma received a call from her father. She picked up the phone only to hear an unfamiliar voice, not the warm, familiar tone she was used to. A strange sense of unease crept into her heart. Sweetheart, something has happened. I need you to do something important, something difficult. Emma froze, her mind swirling with unanswered questions. Why was her father speaking like this? She could hear the worry in his voice, and a tension was gradually building up. I don't understand, Dad. What's going on? Emma asked, her hands trembling slightly with anticipation. I signed a contract with a major company. It was my mistake. I didn't fully grasp the consequences. But to resolve this issue, you need to marry someone. A man you've never met. This is the only way to save the company. Her father's words hit her like a powerful blow, sending her mind into turmoil before she could even process it. His words exploded in her head like a bomb. Marry a stranger? What? Emma's mouth fell open in disbelief. Dad, I can't do that, she cried out, her voice breaking in panic. I can't do this. I can't marry someone I've never met just because our company is in trouble. The words spilled out of Emma's mouth instinctively, but deep down, she knew this wasn't the time to resist. She couldn't refuse. Her family's company was on the brink of bankruptcy, and if she didn't comply, they would lose everything. It felt like being trapped in a suffocating cage, unable to break free no matter how much she wanted to. "I understand," Emma whispered, her voice choked with emotion. She had no other choice. She had to do this. Otherwise, her family would fall into ruin. But Emma couldn't help the sinking feeling in her heart. She couldn't imagine what her future would be like, marrying a stranger, especially when he could be someone completely incompatible with her, someone she knew nothing about. Her mind spiraled with uncertainty. She thought about having to live with this man, someone she felt nothing for except reluctance. "Dad, I don't want to do this," Emma murmured, but her father immediately cut her off. "Sweetheart, this is the only way to save our family. You must do it." His voice was firm, unwavering. "Everything can only be salvaged if you go through with this." A sense of helplessness overwhelmed Emma. She didn't know what to do, didn't know what to think. She had always prided herself on her independence and her ability to make decisions for herself. But this time, the only choice wasn't hers to make. Emma gazed out the window, watching the bustling streets where people hurried through their lives, while her mind was trapped in stillness. She no longer had a choice. There was only one path ahead, one shrouded in uncertainty, leading to an unknown destination. Welcome to Soul Stories, Puker. Life can be overwhelming, but here, we share heartfelt tales to bring you peace, joy, and inspiration. Your support, every comment, like, and follow means the world to us. It motivates us to create more meaningful and uplifting stories just for you. Subscribe now and be part of a community that spreads love, kindness, and positivity. Let's make every day a little brighter together. Emma stepped into Tom Reed's office, her heart weighed down by anxiety and doubt. She sighed as she entered the luxurious yet cold space of his workplace. The long, meticulously arranged desks, the sunlight streaming through the large glass windows. None of it could dispel the tense atmosphere that enveloped her. Beyond the windows, the city stretched out in full view from the towering skyscraper. But inside this room, everything felt shrouded in an icy stillness. Tom sat behind his desk, his tall, commanding presence akin to that of a king ruling over his domain. Dressed in a sharp black suit, his neatly combed hair and razor-sharp gaze remained fixed on his work. He didn't even look up when Emma entered. His expression was impassive, void of any emotion. Whoever she was, it didn't matter. He was a man unmoved by external forces. Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, but her mind continued to spin. She still couldn't believe this was happening. Her peaceful life, her beloved career. Everything was crumbling because of a marriage she had never wanted. This marriage was not born out of love or choice, but was merely a desperate solution to her family's financial troubles. She stepped forward, her movements firm with determination, stopping right in front of his desk. She met his gaze head-on. "I want to cancel this marriage," Emma declared, her voice resolute but laced with anxiety. "This is a mistake. I never agreed to this." Tom remained unmoved, not a flicker of reaction crossing his face. He lifted his glass of whiskey, took a slow sip, his eyes never leaving the swirling liquid as he processed his own thoughts. Only after setting the glass back down did he finally look at her. His gaze held no emotion, only an eerie calm, as if nothing in life could ever truly affect him. "Then prove it," he said, a smirk curling at his lips. His voice was cold, but there was an unmistakable challenge in his tone. "Live with me for 1 month. If after that you still want to leave, I'll let you go." His words struck Emma like a thunderclap. 1 month? She couldn't imagine spending an entire month living with this cold, distant man. But she had no choice. If this was the only way to escape this marriage, she had to take it. Emma stared into his eyes, her expression filled with both determination and skepticism. She didn't trust that he would let her go so easily, but she also couldn't refuse what seemed to be her only option. 1 month. She would have to endure living with him for a month while the question gnawed at her. Could she truly change anything? "I can't do this," she said. but her voice lacked the conviction it had before. Anything could happen, but living with you? Tom's expression remained unchanged. He stood up, moving around his desk, closing the space between them. His gaze remained sharp, unwavering like steel. "Do you think you can change my mind?" he asked, his tone calm yet resolute. "1 month. That's all." A suffocating feeling settled over Emma. 1 month. Just 1 month living with him. Would this be a test she couldn't endure? She had tried to refuse, but the truth was, her life was no longer her own. This decision wasn't hers to make. Life had made it for her. 1 month? "I'll stay," she whispered, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. The days leading up to the wedding passed quickly, filled with an unavoidable sense of cold detachment. Emma had no choice but to comply with her father's demands. And though she had no desire for this marriage, she couldn't refuse. Her family's company was in crisis, and if she didn't go through with this, they would lose everything. Everything was prepared hastily, devoid of any love or romance. She had no say in choosing her wedding dress, no joy in trying on elegant gowns. Every detail was handled by Tom's representatives, and all Emma had to do was show up at the appointed time. She was taken to an expensive bridal boutique, where pristine white dresses sparkled under the showroom lights. Each time she tried on a new dress, she felt like she was putting on a costume for a role that didn't belong to her. Tom's assistants, with their stern expressions, meticulously scrutinized every detail as if they were preparing for an important event. And Emma was merely a piece in their carefully curated story. "So, which one will you choose?" one of the assistants asked as she stood before the mirror, feeling like a shadow trapped inside an unfamiliar gown. Emma looked at her reflection, draped in a flawless white wedding dress, but she didn't see a bride. She saw a tired, sorrowful girl being forced into a role she never wanted. Her eyes reflected nothing but disappointment, yet there was nothing she could do to change her fate. The wedding day arrived too quickly, leaving her no time to prepare herself mentally. Everything unfolded like a nightmare from which she couldn't wake up. She didn't want to see him, didn't want to think about becoming the wife of a complete stranger. She wanted to run away, but the more she thought about it, the more she realized there was no escape. As the ceremony began, the venue was grand and elegant, yet it lacked the warmth and joy she had always imagined for this day. Chandeliers sparkled from above, roses were arranged in intricate patterns, and a live orchestra played a soft melody, enhancing the luxurious atmosphere. But Emma felt like a ghost drifting through the gathering of well-dressed guests. As she walked down the aisle, all eyes were on her, but she only felt lost. She found no warmth in the gaze of her soon-to-be husband. All she saw was a cold, unreadable stare, as if he was indifferent to everything happening around him. He simply stood there, expressionless, unsmiling, his icy gaze fixed on her. As she drew closer, each step felt heavier, as though she was walking on a path of sharp stones. Her heart clenched with every moment. This wasn't her wedding. It was an arrangement made by others, a decision she had no power to refuse. "Do you, Emma Lawson, take Tom Reed to be your husband?" The officiant's voice echoed through the hall, but Emma couldn't answer immediately. She stood frozen, her hands clenched into fists, trying to suppress the turmoil within her. "I do." The words finally escaped her lips, cold and mechanical, as if uttered out of reflex. Tom's gaze remained on her, unwavering, yet devoid of emotion. He simply nodded, as though he was carrying out a scripted obligation. As the vows were exchanged, Emma couldn't shake the suffocating feeling in her chest. The entire wedding felt devoid of life, of love. Everything was a formality, a ritual. She was merely an outsider watching it all unfold. Doubt and fear churned in her mind. Is this really the fate I deserve? When they exchanged rings, Emma felt nothing but emptiness. She glanced at the ring on her finger, then at Tom's eyes. They remained unchanged, distant, unaffected, completely devoid of affection. She knew she wasn't the woman he loved, just as he wasn't the man she had chosen. They were nothing more than two strangers, forced into marriage for reasons neither of them could change. As the ceremony ended, Emma found herself standing alone among the many guests on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. But there was no happiness, only the overwhelming sensation of being a puppet, pulled along by the strings of fate. Married life between Emma and Tom began with exhausting, challenging days. A marriage without love, without desire, merely an arrangement they were both forced to follow. Emma felt like a puppet in someone else's hands, and living with Tom, a cold, powerful man, only intensified that feeling. From the moment they started living under the same roof, Emma resolved to do everything she could to make Tom miserable, hoping he would eventually call off the marriage. She wanted him to grow tired of everything and be the one to let her go. But things didn't unfold the way she expected. With a mischievous plan in mind, Emma decided to start her married life with small yet extremely annoying pranks. While Tom was preparing for an important business meeting, Emma decided to do something completely natural. She entered the kitchen setting up a plate of toast with strawberry jam, arranging everything to look like she was preparing a perfect breakfast. However, she couldn't stop giggling to herself when she noticed Tom's expensive suit hanging nearby. With careful precision, she accidentally let the jam-covered toast slip onto his white shirt. A brief moment of victory flashed through her as she saw his pristine shirt smeared with bright red jam. If he wants me here, I'll make sure he regrets it, she thought smugly. When Tom entered the kitchen and put on his jacket, he barely glanced at the stained shirt before letting out a quiet sigh. Emma expected him to explode with anger, but instead, something unexpected happened. He simply said, "Looks like you need to learn how to stay away from the kitchen." "Oh, really? But isn't it a privilege to have an expert around?" Emma teased, her tone playful. Tom only let out a small sigh before walking out of the kitchen, returning moments later in a different shirt. His expression remained cold and unreadable, but there was something different in his demeanor. Without a word, he calmly retrieved ingredients from the fridge and began preparing breakfast. "Sit down, I'll make breakfast for you," he said, his voice steady, with no hint of irritation. Emma stood still for a moment, caught off guard by his reaction, but she said nothing. She took a seat at the table, watching as he worked. His movements were precise and effortless, as if cooking was second nature to him. Not something he had to do, but something he did with a strange sense of patience, despite the mess she had created. A few minutes later, he placed a plate of perfectly cooked eggs, toast with jam, and a glass of fresh orange juice in front of her. The kitchen, which had looked like a disaster zone minutes ago, was now impeccably neat. "What do you think?" Tom asked, his gaze on her, not stern but surprisingly gentle. Emma glanced at the meal, then at him. A part of her felt embarrassed, but another part was unexpectedly moved. Despite her deliberate attempt to create chaos, he had calmly fixed everything and even cared for her. She couldn't deny the warmth in his actions, even if he never spoke a word of affection. "Thank you. I didn't expect you to be so calm," she admitted, her voice softer than before. She picked up a piece of toast and took a bite, tasting the rich strawberry jam. It was a delicious breakfast, and she couldn't ignore the unspoken care he had put into it. Tom merely shrugged, offering a faint smile before sitting across from her. A strange warmth filled the kitchen, and for a moment, Emma was unsettled by how patient he was with her. Unsatisfied with the results of her first attempt, Emma decided to push Tom further. She knew he always woke up early for work, so she planned to wake him up at 4 a.m., but in a very special way, blasting loud disco music. She carefully set her alarm and turned the speakers to full volume, filling the house with thumping bass and electrifying beats. The moment the music blared through the walls, she felt a rush of victory, but her excitement was short-lived when she heard movement. Moments later, Tom stepped into the room, his face half-shadowed by the dim hallway light, his expression unreadable. Emma braced herself, expecting him to lash out in frustration, but instead he simply raised an eyebrow and asked in a calm, slightly amused tone, "Emma can't sleep. I just thought you weren't quite ready to start your day without a little energy boost." Emma smirked, her eyes gleaming with mischief, as if this was just an innocent joke. She expected him to be angry, to yell at her for being ridiculous. But no. Tom simply walked over, turned off the music, and turned back to her, his gaze steady. "Then from now on, you'll be responsible for my mornings," he said smoothly, his voice carrying an unexpected hint of humor. Emma stood there, caught off guard. She had anticipated irritation, but not this. Not amusement. He wasn't angry. He was playing along. His patience, his calm demeanor, it was completely unexpected. The feeling of victory she had at the beginning started to fade. Her prank hadn't brought her the satisfaction she had hoped for. Instead, it left her questioning herself. Did she really want to keep testing him? A part of her still wanted to push further, to see if she could finally break through his composure, force him to give up on this marriage. But Tom had an answer for every one of her tricks. His responses, gentle yet firm, only deepened the strange, unsettling emotions building inside her. Unable to stop herself, Emma continued her efforts to make their marriage as exhausting as possible. This time, she decided to push the limits even further. The formal dinner they had to attend was the perfect opportunity for her to express her discontent once again. She knew that high-profile events where Tom appeared always drew attention, and she wanted to make things as uncomfortable as possible. She chose the most outrageous outfit imaginable, an overly bright, garish dress paired with impossibly high heels. Everything about her look screamed eccentricity, ensuring that she would stand out in the worst possible way. Emma couldn't help but smirk at the thought of being the most eye-catching person in the crowd, but for all the wrong reasons. When she stepped out of the dressing room, she expected Tom to be furious. Yet to her surprise, he merely offered a small, unreadable smile. Not one of approval, but not of outright criticism either. "You're not seriously going like that, are you?" Tom asked, his voice firm, but devoid of anger. "I don't see a problem. At least I won't be the only one drawing attention," Emma replied, her tone dripping with sarcasm as she met his gaze defiantly. As they arrived at the event, Emma immediately felt the weight of every gaze on her. She was undoubtedly the star of the evening, but not in the way she had envisioned. Instead of admiration, she felt the subtle sting of judgment and barely concealed mockery. She had certainly succeeded in capturing attention, but it was not the kind she had anticipated. What shocked her most, however, was Tom's reaction, or rather his lack of one. He did not recoil in embarrassment, nor did he try to distance himself from her. Instead, he remained by her side, unfazed, his presence a silent shield against the unkind whispers. "Emma, you've certainly made this evening more interesting," he remarked lightly, his tone carrying an unexpected warmth. His smile this time was different, not cold or dismissive, but one of quiet understanding. "Thanks, but I don't think I'll be able to entertain you like this forever," Emma said, forcing a smirk, though a flicker of doubt lingered in her eyes. Despite her attempts to be insufferable, she couldn't ignore the quiet patience in Tom's demeanor. Throughout the night, Emma couldn't help but notice the subtle ways Tom looked after her. Even though she was aware of the critical stares and quiet whispers around them, he never once let her feel isolated. He stood close, his mere presence enough to shield her from the judgment of others. He never let her face the ridicule alone. As the evening drew to a close, Emma's feet throbbed in pain from the absurdly high heels she had stubbornly chosen. Descending the staircase, she miscalculated her step, twisting her ankle. Pain shot through her leg with each movement, making it impossible to walk properly. Before she could even brace herself, Tom was already there. Without hesitation, he bent down and lifted her into his arms, carrying her with ease. No complaints, no irritation, just quiet, unspoken care. "Don't worry, I'll take you home," he murmured softly. Emma said nothing, merely letting herself rest in his arms. In that moment, she realized that her pranks hadn't just exhausted her. They had stirred something unexpected within her as well. Tom wasn't just tolerating her antics. He was seeing through them, understanding the things she wasn't saying out loud. Despite all her efforts to make their marriage unbearable, to test his patience, she had never once been met with anger or frustration. He never retaliated, never lashed out. Instead, he remained steady, watching over her in a way she hadn't expected. Quietly, protectively, and with each silent act of care, he was beginning to slip past the walls she had so desperately built around herself. There were moments, brief, fleeting moments, when she felt an inexplicable connection between them. She didn't want to acknowledge it, but Tom's unwavering patience and his warm, steady gaze were making it harder and harder to ignore. Perhaps in all the moments he had stayed silent, he had been protecting her, not just physically, but emotionally as well. Emma felt something shift inside her. She had always thought she wanted to escape this marriage, to break free, but now she wasn't so sure. Because deep down she was beginning to feel something she never thought she would, something she wasn't sure she was ready to admit. Day by day, Emma continued her mischievous antics, hoping to drive Tom to frustration and force him to end the marriage. Yet contrary to her expectations, every time she tried to push him to his limits, he only grew more patient and gentle with her. He never got angry. Instead, he found ways to protect her, to care for her in ways she couldn't understand. It left her feeling unsettled. She had always thought of him as an arrogant, cold man, too absorbed in his work, but his actions were forcing her to reconsider. One evening, after all her pranks had failed to provoke the reaction she had hoped for, Emma decided to do nothing at all. Instead, she simply sat in silence and observed him. As they sat in the living room, sipping tea, the silence between them stretched on. The entire room was bathed in stillness. The only light came from the moon filtering through the window, casting soft, shifting patterns on the floor. Emma gazed out at the night sky, feeling the quiet serenity of the evening, but inside her mind was anything but peaceful. Tom was cold, distant, always composed, always unreadable. And yet, no matter what she did, he never lashed out. Instead, he merely smiled, his patience never wavering. She couldn't understand why he was so gentle with her, why he refused to react with the frustration she had anticipated. Finally, she turned to him, unable to contain her curiosity any longer, and asked in a quiet voice, "Do you never get angry when I pull these ridiculous stunts?" Tom didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the window, as if he were searching for an answer in the darkness beyond. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of his slow, steady breathing. After a long pause, he finally turned to look at her, but this time, his gaze was different. No longer cold, no longer arrogant, just quiet, steady, and something else, something she couldn't quite define. "I don't want to hurt you like others have." His voice was deep, laced with an underlying sadness, restrained yet full of meaning. Pain doesn't just come from anger, it also comes from indifference, from distance. Emma stared at him in shock, her heart tightening at his words. He wasn't scolding her. He wasn't dismissing her. Instead, he had spoken a truth so profound that it left her speechless. She had expected irritation, perhaps even cruelty, but instead he had given her honesty. And in that honesty, she heard something deeper than anger, something far more painful. Tom shifted slightly, his gaze turning inward, revealing a part of himself he had long kept hidden. He didn't look at her this time. Instead, he stared at a point in the distance, as if trying to keep himself from delving too deep into the past. Then in a voice quieter than before, he spoke again, this time with effort, as if pulling the words from wounds long buried. "When I was a child, I watched my mother suffer from cancer until she passed away. I couldn't do anything to save her. And after she was gone, I felt like I had lost everything. My father couldn't help me. He had his business, his endless projects, and nothing else. I grew up alone with no one by my side. I had to learn to be strong, to stand on my own. That's why I built these walls, so that no one could hurt me again." He exhaled a slow breath before adding, "I'm afraid that if I love someone, I'll lose them, that I'll have to face that loneliness again, and I don't know if I can survive it a second time." Emma listened in silence, his words settling deep in her heart. They felt like old scars being exposed, wounds reopening. And as she looked into his eyes, she saw it, the grief, the pain he had carried for so long, buried beneath layers of ice. She had never imagined what he had been through, but now she felt as if she understood him in a way she never had before. He didn't say anything else. His eyes remained distant, locked onto memories no one else could reach. Emma couldn't stay still any longer. She didn't want him to face this pain alone, not anymore. Gently, she reached for his arm, resting her head against his shoulder, saying nothing. There was no need for words. In that moment, the silence between them was enough. Their hearts had started to beat in unison. Tom was no longer the cold, unfeeling man she had believed him to be, and she was no longer the wife filled with doubt. The final day of their 1-month agreement arrived, and Emma felt as if the weight of the world was pressing down on her. She stood by the window, staring outside at the dimming lights of the city as twilight cast its hazy glow. Confusion gripped her, her heart torn in two. She had spent the past month in a whirlwind of emotions, sharing moments she never thought she'd have with Tom. She still remembered the first time she walked into this house, so determined to leave. But now, after living with him for a month, she couldn't deny that something had changed. She had seen warmth in his eyes, felt the care he showed her through the smallest gestures. Slowly, the cold exterior she had first seen had unraveled, revealing patience, kindness, and a quiet strength she hadn't expected. But her mind kept telling her that love couldn't grow from a forced marriage, that she couldn't stay in a relationship that had started with no foundation of love. No matter how well he treated her, she couldn't justify staying in a marriage based on obligation rather than choice. And so she made her decision. She stood up, picked up her suitcase, gripping it tightly as if trying to hold on to all the unspoken emotions within her. She had to walk away. She had to close this chapter. As she stepped toward the door, she saw Tom standing in the living room, watching her with unreadable eyes. He didn't move, didn't rush to stop her. He simply stood there, staring at her, as if he had already anticipated this moment. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Did this month mean nothing to you?" His voice was low but laced with pain. The question cut through Emma like a blade. She stopped, her hands trembling around the handle of her suitcase. She couldn't answer, not immediately. She turned to look at him, and for the first time his eyes weren't distant. They weren't cold. They were full of something else, something deeper, something more vulnerable than she had ever seen before. He wasn't just asking for an answer. He was asking her to stay. Emma's heart clenched painfully. She knew whatever she said now would change everything. "You know, don't you?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "This past month, I won't deny that it meant something to me, but I can't stay in a marriage without love. I can't lie to myself." Tom didn't argue. He didn't try to convince her. He only stood there, his chest rising and falling in a slow, controlled breath. "I know I can't make you stay," he murmured, "but I want you to. Don't go." His voice was soft, but his eyes held an unspoken plea. Emma felt her heart shatter at those words. She knew he meant them. She could hear it, the raw, quiet confession in his voice. And it hurt because, deep down, she knew she had started to feel something for him too. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She turned away, looking at her suitcase. "Can I really leave without looking back?" she wondered. But just as she took a step forward, a strong hand grasped hers, stopping her. She turned back, meeting his gaze. And in that moment, she knew. She couldn't leave. She couldn't walk away from him. And for the first time, tears fell freely down her cheeks. Not out of sadness, but because she had finally accepted the truth. "I'll stay," she whispered. "I'll give myself a chance to love you." And as she stepped forward, wrapping her arms around him, she knew this was just the beginning of something real, something neither of them had expected, something worth staying for. After spending time living in their newfound love, Emma's mischievous antics gradually became cherished memories between her and Tom. Together, they built a marriage filled with warmth, even if there were still moments of uncertainty. Over time, Tom expressed his love not through grand declarations, but through subtle actions, gestures that spoke louder than words, and Emma found that she no longer felt awkward around him. Her heart, though hesitant to fully admit it, had already begun to change in ways she could no longer deny. However, just as their relationship was blossoming into something truly beautiful, an unexpected shock from the past disrupted everything. One afternoon, Emma received a call from an unknown number. When she answered, a familiar voice sent her heart into turmoil. "Emma, it's Ryan." Ryan, the man she had once loved with all her heart, the love of her youth. Memories came flooding back, pulling her into the undertow of the past. He had been her first love, the man she had once believed was her forever. She had been willing to sacrifice everything for him, and now, hearing his voice again, she couldn't deny the emotions that stirred deep within her. I know you never wanted this marriage. Ryan's voice was both persuasive and desperate. Leave him and come back to me. Emma's heart clenched. Just hearing his name sent her mind spinning. Ryan had been her first love, the person she had once thought she would never stop loving. But now, as she listened to his words, she realized something. There was a distance between them, one that hadn't been there before. Ryan had left for his studies abroad and disappeared from her life without warning, leaving her to bear the pain of losing him alone. For years, she had secretly harbored the hope that he would return to her. And now that he had, why did she feel so different? She stared at her phone, torn between the past and the present. Part of her longed for what once was, but another part felt uneasy, guilty even, because of Tom. He was the one who had been by her side, the one who had protected her, loved her without asking for anything in return. He had never pressured her, never demanded her love. He had simply waited, hoping that one day she would choose him as he had already chosen her. Emma stood at a painful crossroads, the past and the present. Ryan and Tom, both had been significant in her life, but now her love had changed. She knew she couldn't live in memories forever, but how could she face the truth of what her heart was telling her? Tom noticed the turmoil in her expression. He didn't question her, didn't demand answers. Instead, he simply looked at her with quiet understanding. Emma, the decision is yours alone. Whatever you choose, I will respect it, Tom said, his voice calm but carrying an underlying sadness. Emma and Tom attended a prestigious gala together. As they entered the grand ballroom, Emma's heart skipped a beat when she saw him. Ryan. He stood near the center of the room, his gaze locked onto her, filled with longing and hope. The room sparkled with chandeliers, the air filled with the sound of laughter and lively conversations. But for Emma, time seemed to slow, the world around her fading away. In that moment, there were only three people: Emma, Ryan, and Tom. Do you still love me? Ryan asked, stepping closer, his voice a plea wrapped in nostalgia. Emma stood frozen, unable to immediately answer. The memories of their love came rushing back. The way he had been her first love, the way he had once meant everything to her. He had been her past, the one she had dreamed of for so long. But why, now that she was standing before him, did he feel like a stranger? She turned her gaze toward Tom. He stood there silent, watching her. Not with judgment, not with expectation, but with the unwavering patience he had always shown her. He wasn't trying to convince her to stay. He wasn't asking her to choose him. He was simply there, waiting for her decision. And in his eyes, Emma saw something undeniable. She couldn't lie to herself any longer. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward. Without hesitation, she reached for Tom, stood on her toes and kissed him, right there, in front of everyone. The room went silent for a heartbeat before erupting into applause, as if the world itself was acknowledging the decision that had just been made. Ryan stood motionless, stunned, his eyes filled with disbelief. Meanwhile, Tom smiled. But it wasn't a smug, victorious smile. It was soft, full of warmth and understanding, filled with the love he had always carried for her. This kiss, her first kiss that she had willingly given him, was her answer. He had won. I win, Tom whispered teasingly in her ear as they left the party. Emma flushed, but she felt an overwhelming sense of peace. A quiet, gentle happiness filled her heart. She chuckled softly. What do you mean, win? I was just testing you, she said playfully, though they both knew the truth. And from that moment on, Emma knew. Love had never been a mistake. The love she and Tom had built against all odds was the most precious thing in her life. Tonight was a gentle evening, the house bathed in the warm glow of candlelight. Tom and Emma sat together on the sofa, her head resting against his shoulder. The atmosphere felt still, as if time itself had paused, wrapping them in a comforting embrace. They didn't need words. Happiness was present in their silence, in the quiet beats of their hearts. Emma gazed out the window, admiring the soft twinkle of the stars scattered across the night sky. A warmth settled in her chest, a feeling of peace she had never quite experienced before. Beside her, Tom sat in deep thought, his expression steady yet contemplative. Sensing the shift in the air, Emma turned toward him, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "Emma," Tom began, his voice low and soothing, tinged with a hint of hesitation. "There's a story I've wanted to tell you." Emma tilted her head, sensing something important. "What story?" she asked, unaware of what was coming. Tom smiled, but there was a distant look in his eyes, as though he were reaching into a memory long buried. "It's about a boy, a timid boy, one who had lost his mother too soon and grew up in a world filled with loneliness and fear. He was bullied constantly, with no one to stand up for him, until one day a little girl, smaller than him, stepped in to protect him, and every time they both got beaten up, she never backed down." Emma's brows knitted slightly. She wasn't sure why Tom was telling her this, but something about the story held her in place. "The boy was afraid," Tom continued, his voice softer now. "But when the girl stood in front of him, shielding him despite her own fear, he realized he wasn't alone. And from that moment on, he made a promise to himself. One day he would marry that girl because she was the only one who had ever fought for him." Tom paused, turning to look at her. His gaze was filled with something deep, something tender. And as Emma studied his face, something stirred in her, an odd sense of familiarity, like a memory she couldn't quite grasp. "And that little girl was you," he whispered, his voice carrying a weight she hadn't expected. Emma froze. His words struck her like a bolt of lightning. "Me?" Her mind reeled. That's impossible," she stammered. "I don't remember that." Tom chuckled softly, his eyes searching hers. "But I do. I remember it clearly. I remember standing there, terrified, thinking no one would help me. And then you appeared. You weren't the strongest, nor the biggest, but you were the bravest person I had ever met. From that moment on, I knew I would marry you one day. I loved you from that moment, even if you didn't know it." Emma's breath hitched, her heart pounding. She was speechless. She had no memory of that day, yet as she looked into Tom's eyes, she knew he was telling the truth. Her chest tightened with emotion, overwhelmed by the revelation. "You loved me since then?" she murmured, her voice trembling. "But why? Why didn't you ever tell me?" Tom reached up, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch warm and reassuring. "Because I knew you didn't remember," he admitted, "and I didn't want to burden you with my feelings. But I never forgot. I promised myself that one day when the time was right, I would ask you to stay by my side, no matter how long it took." He paused, his eyes full of raw sincerity. "Because you are the only person I have ever wanted to be with." Emma could hardly breathe. Her heart ached, not in pain, but in the overwhelming realization of what he had just confessed. A love so deep, so unwavering, had been right in front of her all along. And though she had not remembered the past, she could feel the truth of his words in every action he had ever shown her. Then Tom reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He lowered himself onto one knee, looking up at her with a mix of love and nervous anticipation. "Emma, will you give me another chance?" His voice was steady, yet his eyes held a vulnerability she had never seen before. "A chance to walk this life with you? To love you the way I've always wanted to?" Emma stared at him, her hands trembling as they clasped his. She could feel his heartbeat through his touch, strong and real, just like his love. She didn't need to think, she didn't need to ask any more questions. "Yes, Tom," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." A brilliant smile spread across Tom's face as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It was a perfect fit, just like the way she fit in his arms when he pulled her into a tight embrace. The moment was quiet, yet filled with the loudest kind of love, the kind that had always been there, waiting patiently to be acknowledged. Thank you for following this heartfelt story. If you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways, don't forget to hit the like button and share this story with your friends. To never miss out on touching and meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone. Let's cherish the beautiful moments of life.